Good evening, everyone, and welcome to A Chef's Journey through the Alexander Valley. This is the sixth and final episode in this really fun series. My name is Courtney Humiston. I am a sommelier and wine journalist based on the Sonoma Coast, and I would like to thank the Alexander Valley wine growers for organizing this really special series and for inviting me to be the moderator. So even though this is the last episode, I would like to invite you all to either revisit or to experience for the first time each of the previous episodes by purchasing the wine through Gary's Wine, which you can find through Alexander Valley winegrowers.org. And they've been so kind, they put together all of the tasting kits, so you can actually just order each series that comes with tasting notes and with the recipes from the chef that we featured. So it's a really nice package. And then you can watch the previous episodes on our Facebook page, Alexander Valley Wine Growers. And you can also order like all 18 wines. So if you really want to like have a nice wine education, I know you're all drinking wine anyway, so you may as well connect with these wonderful wine growers and learn something and try some really great recipes as well. So tonight I would like to invite you, first of all, to pour a glass of the La Cienega Vineyard Rosé of Cabernet. Go ahead and get your Chardonnay, Carpenter Chardonnay open as well. And if you have a decanter available, please do decant the 2017 Lancaster Cabernet Sauvignon, which we'll be tasting last this evening. Also, we will be answering questions. So there is a Q&A. I have the chat open and we will answer as many questions as time allows. And also, if you know any of our panelists tonight, or you have experience with these wines or thoughts, feelings, go ahead and throw them out there. It would be great to hear from you. So tonight we are really pleased to be tasting a rosé and a Chardonnay and a Cabernet Sauvignon, which is really fun. It kind of showcases the diversity of the Alexander Valley. And we have not one, but two proprietors from La Cienega. So we have Werner Siegert, the vintner who is in charge of all things vineyards, and Katja Siegert-Newman, who is the managing partner. Welcome.
Thank you.
And from Carpenter, we have Laura Carpenter-Hawks, who is the founder and proprietor. Hi, Laura.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. And then from Lancaster Estate, we have the winemaker, David Drake. Welcome, David. And last but certainly not least, Chef Liza Hinman, who is the chef owner of the Spinster Sisters. Liza, please tell us a little bit about yourself and about your restaurant.
Thank you so much. My name is Liza Hinman. I'm the chef and owner of the Spinster Sisters, which is a restaurant down in Santa Rosa in Sonoma County. And we are a vibrant neighborhood restaurant. We love to focus on local produce and local wine, of course. And we are just getting reopened after a long year, but excited to be still serving our local community. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, thank you. And I would just add as a local that the Spinster Sisters is a well-beloved restaurant. The food is amazing and the hospitality is spot on. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, here we are in the Alexander Valley. So where in the world is the Alexander Valley? So we're up in the northeastern Sonoma County. This is about 15,000 acres of grapevines that follows the Russian River from Cloverdale down to Healdsburg. It was first planted to grapes, wine grapes, in the 1840s, and now includes 82 growers, 31 wineries, and the real focus here is family-run farms and wineries. So I think if you've been following this series, you've realized that so many of the people that we've had on here are so closely connected to the land. Either their families have planted it or they're multi-generational. And so it's something that makes the Alexander Valley really special. Cabernet Sauvignon is certainly the calling card, but there's lots of different grape varieties that grow here. And tonight is cool because we have a traditional kind of Cabernet Sauvignon Bordeaux blend, and we also have a rosé of Cabernet Sauvignon, which is really cool. And the La Cienega Vineyard, I want to point out we are tasting their rosé tonight, but they do make excellent dry, full Cabernet Sauvignon as well. So if you have your rosé, first of all, cheers. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. La Cienega is an exclusive Cabernet Sauvignon vineyard, which is located on 40 acres, family run, certified sustainable, and the name comes from the word, the pond in Spanish, and there's a wonderful kind of origin story that goes with that, that I will let Werner tell us.
Well, it's my turn, I guess. So welcome and to Alexander Valley and to La Cienega Vineyard. My wife and I bought this property, about 43 acres, in 1994. I was still in Houston then. And we figured we should have something for the later years and for retirement. And we just loved the area. My daughter helped us actually find it. It took us, in reality, it took us 4 days to find it. It was a pretty crazy story, but we had big day off, and I took it from Houston. We found it in 3 or 4 days. Don't ask me how, but it was done. The actual property was owned by Charlie Schultz way back before the Flora Ranch was developed. So he still has his cabin here, or a part of it, and an outhouse. And his daughter kept their horses up down there in a corral, and there was a little lake down below where they got water. So the place was pretty wild. My wife said, gee, we're just gonna buy this thing and play Adam and Eve for a while until we get too old. They put us in an old house. Anyhow, in 97, we decided this is too big. We're gonna try to grow some grapes here. And then we decided in 97 to put about 16 acres into cab. We had, of course, help with that. We had no idea how to do that. We had all these oaks around there. So it was all done. And the reason we did it was because the soil was really perfect for cab. And it has volcanic sandy soil, pretty good elevation, up to 350 feet, which is not excitingly high, but it's not bad. And the reason it's so good is because of the inclination and because of stressing on the vines, on these hills. So we're getting smaller berries, especially on the top part. And so that's, it turned out pretty good. We invested the money. We figured out there's enough water. We have aquifers on about a 200-foot well and a 10,000-gallon water tank. So all of that is just perfect for starting out. And we had our first, the grapes are all on 110R, and it's 7 clone number 7. And we planted in 97. The rootstock in the 98, they were field grafted, which is the better route to go. And in 01, we had our first harvest, 35 tons, and it all went to Behringer for 14 years. Every ton of it. And in those days, it was almost up to $3,200 a ton. Anyhow, then I made wine myself in between, down in the cellar. So we did our own, and really nice, good quality. My friends liked it. And so in 18, we harvested 93 tons, way above the normal. And because we went over to cane pruning, and so we decided, what are we gonna do now? So I talked to Katya and says, well, why don't we just make some wine out of it? And that's what we started in 18, and we did almost 17 tons. And that's became these 2 bottles right here. And then last year, we figured, why don't we do some to cover the shortfall of our 20 crop, which we lost. So that's turned into the rosé. And one other thing is we're trying to go organic one of these days. We're now sustainable, but we want to go possibly organic. We just talked to our man that helps me with the vineyard, and he said, no big problem, just go mechanical rototilling. So that's what's going to be the next step. So let me turn it over to Katya, and she'll tell you the rest on the rosé.
Thank you, and thanks again to the organizers for the invitation. We really enjoyed the whole series. I think we've watched all 6. So just a beautiful opportunity to get to know our neighbors and the beautiful wines that come from Alexander Valley. As my dad mentioned, we've been growing grapes for 20 years and making a little bit on the side, but didn't make commercial wine until 2018. So we're sort of new to the process of making and selling wine. And I really want to shout out a big thanks to the ladies of La Cienega Roundtable. Early on, I was able to form a group of women who know about branding and selling and marketing. And so they've been a huge help to me. So basically, we started with the 2018 vintage. It's always been a dream to make wine. We have a 100% Cabernet and a red blend. And that was just released in the fall. And then, unfortunately, as many around us in 2019, we lost our entire harvest to the fire. So we were stuck with this challenge of having a year where we'll have no wine to release. And so we thought about the idea of doing a rosé. And doing a rosé of Cabernet Sauvignon is a bit rare. I think it's delicious, but you don't see it as often. So we talked to our winemaker. We are very lucky to have a winemaker. His name is Nova Carroll. He's with Fopiano Winery down in Healdsburg, and he makes beautiful rosés. He said, absolutely, we can do it. So these are all estate grown Cabernet Sauvignon grapes that were harvested on October 1st. So just a few months ago. Hand-picked, all our wine is hand-picked. We can't really get the machines onto our hills, but it's actually better for the grapes. And this rosé is a saignée. So this is the method where you crush the grapes and immediately take the juice off so it doesn't spend any time on the skin. That's why you get that beautiful color. It's also called a free run method. And then the wine goes straight into the barrel. It was barrel fermented sur lie, which is another French word, which just means that it was fermented in the neutral oak for about 4 months. Then we bottled it late January, and we were able to release it just in time for Valentine's Day. I think it really turned out to have a great sort of crisp, very floral flavor. It's got a lot of plum, some notes of nectarine, a little strawberry, but just a dry, nice acidity. There's no sweetness. It's already a big hit. We only made 75 cases, and I think we've already sold half. Mostly to my friends. So it's popular, and it's funny. It's not, a lot of people say, well, rosé, we're going to wait till spring or summer. This is not your sip on a hot day on the beach type of rosé. This is a rosé for food. This is, I call it your winter white wine. I think it goes great with any kind of seafood. I love it with steamed mussels, your creamy pastas, and then sort of your heavier charcuterie, blue cheese and prosciutto. So the ladies of the round table like to call it the rosé for red wine lovers. So we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It is delicious, and I totally agree. Rosé is so fun, especially as a sommelier doing wine pairings, because you get all of those kind of red fruit characteristics and the savory components that come from red grapes, but you still have the freshness and the brightness and the acidity that is so nice with seafood in the winter, which is in season. So more on the food pairing, I think that's a great segue to have Liza talk about her pairing, which is the burrata crostini with roasted strawberry onion jam. Yum.
So the dish that I chose for this wine, because it had some weight, but it also has these sort of nice lush notes, and it definitely, I was thinking of the time of year that we're enjoying it right now and what is coming into season. And I love to do slightly more savory applications of strawberries. And so this recipe, you make basically like a kind of fortified jam where you roast some of the berries and then you cook some of the berries with sugar, but I put some really delicate spring onion in there. So it adds a little bit of that savory note to it. And then the burrata, the richness of the burrata, which I think just balances really nicely with the acid levels of the wine. It just is a fun appetizer that I think this rosé has the weight to stand up to. I think some rosés they would wash out with a preparation like this. But so it's just something that's really seasonal, easy to prepare, and I think just would be great with this wine.
Thank you, Liza. That's so nice. And I mentioned this last week with our rosé pairing, but for me, visual pairing also really matters. And your dish is so beautiful, and especially like picturing it on the table with the rosé, all of those colors are just so lovely. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
And I have a question here, Katya, which maybe you can answer, and then afterwards tell us how we can buy your wine and if you're doing any hospitality experiences this spring or summer. So Annika asks, tell us about the history of the crest on your label.
Oh, do you?
Can I do that?
Go ahead. You can see it online.
I did a little hijacking. It's actually the crust, the Seagut crust that goes back many, many years. And my father got it from his father and so on. And I got the real stamp, the real insignia stamp for the wax, for the sign, sealing the letters. And so we copied it. And actually my grandson put the flag colors of Denmark and Austria in there. So we did a little tweaking on it.
We decided it was okay to take an old world emblem and bring it to the new world and update it. So we got rid of one of the soldiers because we don't really need soldiers here. We do.
It was a knight, not a soldier.
It was a knight. It was a knight.
Sorry.
But we added the mountain because we have the view of Mount St. Helena. So it's a new world adaptation of the old family crest. And we use it on each of the bottles, which for the different colors, which I thought would be fun. Regarding where to buy our wine, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we are available online at lacienagavineyard.com. You can purchase the wine there, and then you can always email me for special orders. We don't have a distributor. We're small, family owned. We do all direct to customer. And we're in a couple shops in the Los Angeles area and a couple restaurants as well. But best place to get it is online or email me.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm getting a question here, and I actually don't know the answer, so I'm just kind of going to open it up to all of our panelists. But other producers who make rosé of Cabernet, anyone want to throw some out there?
We have a neighbor.
Hawks does.
And Hawks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Hawks makes one, which apparently you just completely sold out. And then you should check out, I don't know if she has any this year, but our neighbor across the street, Alice Sutro.
I think so. I think she makes some.
She's been on a show as well. She does beautiful wines.
Oh, Alice is making a rosé.
She did last year or the year before. I don't know if she made one this year. You'd have to check.
Okay. So that's Sutro, everyone. So Sutro and Hawks are two wineries that have also been on this series that make great wine. So definitely check those out as well. All right, Laura Carpenter Hawks is coming up next with her Stone Vineyard Chardonnay. So this is a wine that is made from her family's estate that was planted in 1972. It's very distinctive, structural, mineral-driven, very fresh, but very grounded as well, I would say. And Laura, take it away.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in and for having me. As Courtney mentioned, this was planted by my family back in 1972. The vineyard itself is almost like a little valley. It sits right next to Macama Creek, which is about a 7.5 mile long tributary of the Russian River. And this spot in the vineyard where we get the Chardonnay grapes for Carpenter actually used to be part of the creek bed before a levee was built, I don't know, 120, 150 years ago. So the soil is a little different than the rest of the vineyard. It's very gravelly, and of course it's volcanic from being close to Mount St. Helena. So gravelly loam and volcanic soils. And yes, I think the mineral aspect of this wine is definitely a signature of it. We put about 30% of it through malolactic fermentation to give it a little bit of a rounded edge, but it's not a huge butterball. We like the fruit, so we really want to showcase that. It doesn't see any new oak. We are modeling it maybe a little bit like a Burgundy, but obviously with California fruit. But we just love the acidity and the brightness and the food friendliness of the old world wine. So that's kind of our, you know, what we're aspiring to with this wine. And yeah, I always loved this Chardonnay. We've been making it since 2013. So we started Carpenter in 2012 to focus on Pinot Noir and some other varietals that we don't grow. This one we do grow ourselves. So it's all estate, 100% Chardonnay. We made about 200 cases of this, and it's a 2019. It was a great vintage for grapes in the Alexander Valley. If you could get them in before the fires. So we lucked out. Yeah, and it's a really great wine to pair with food. Obviously, I just mentioned that, but the floral notes are there, and then I get a lot of citrus blossom, and maybe a little bit of tropical, like some kiwi, maybe sometimes a little mango. I think it's a beautiful wine, and it's nice to share it with all of you. And I'm excited about the pairing, so I can't wait to hear about it from Liza.
Laura, thank you so much. And I first met Laura when I was the wine director for a restaurant in Healdsburg that was solely focused on Sonoma County wines. And as a lover of Chablis and white Burgundy, I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to find some wines locally that kind of fit those flavor profiles that I love about the minerality and the stoniness of Burgundy and Chablis. And then Laura walks in and shows me her wine, and I was like, awesome, I found it. so that's I've loved her wines for a long time and poured them at several restaurants. So thank you. And with that, Liza, tell us about your pairing, which is the crab and radicchio risotto.
So this dish is something that I actually pulled and have cooked for a long time from my early days of cooking in San Francisco. You can occasionally find it on the menu at Delfina restaurant where I was a young line cook long ago. But it's just a beautiful pairing, and I've continued to put it on my menus and cook it at home when I have a little bit of crab, left over from that crab feed that no one polished off. But I love it with this Chardonnay because it works really well with the slightly richer notes, but it's because of that minerality. There's like an edge of bitterness to the radicchio that as it cooks kind of gets a little sweeter, and I just feel like they work really well together. And the crab, that underlying note of the crab, we use the butter, the kind of liquid inside the body of the crab in the rice, as well as the pieces of the crab folded in. And we put a little Meyer lemon zest in there, which kind of gets a little hint of that citrus. But yeah, it's just a dish that I love. And as soon as I tried the Chardonnay, it just came right into my head like this. I think these naturally would be beautiful together. And you can see in the picture, we finish the big chunks. We do a little brown butter and kind of base those chunks, so it adds a little toasty note to that. I think it worked really well with this wine. So it was fun for me to revisit it.
Thank you, Liza. And for our guests, I was kind of reflecting on this the other day. We've been using a lot of Dungeness crab in the spring tasting series. So Liza, I wonder if you could kind of just talk to us and our guests about how special Dungeness crab is and why it's so kind of prominent on Bay Area menus this time of the year.
Absolutely. I mean, we are lucky enough to have this local product that's actually quite sustainable and has just beautiful flavor and body. And these Dungeness crab, the season starts in winter, and it's always like everyone hopes they start for Christmas. I know I'm an East Coast originally, moved out here, and it was no longer, turkey on Christmas. It was crab on Christmas. And it just, I think it stands up to lobster in its weight and its depth of flavor. And I know some people who would argue that it's superior, but it pairs really nicely with wine, also with beer. It's really versatile. You can cook it, you can eat it raw. So we're so lucky as Californians and West Coasters to have this product available to us for not even quite half the year the season lasts.
And Liza, if we do have guests who are not as lucky to be in California, is there, besides lobster you mentioned, but are other things that you could recommend kind of substituting these recipes with?
Yeah, I mean, you could almost do a shrimp version of it. I think that shrimp and radicchio work well together. And again, it has, sort of a weightiness and a minerality to it and a body to it that could be comparable. And I think you could make a shrimp stock to use in the base of the risotto, and I think that would work nicely as well.
Awesome, thank you. So Laura, back to you. I know you do tastings on your beautiful estate that is actually taking place sometimes in this vineyard. So maybe walk us through how we can visit you and buy your wine.
Great, yeah. As La Cienega, the best place to get the wine is directly from the winery. I am in a few shops and restaurants in the Bay Area, but our website, carpenterwine.com, is pretty user-friendly. You can find all the wines available and purchase them there, and you can pick them up by arrangement, or I can ship them. And to visit, an email, Laura@Carpenter Wine, or info@Carpenter Wine works, or a phone call even. I'm pretty much open 7 days a week by availability, all by appointment, of course. And yes, currently I'm doing outdoor tasting, so it is weather dependent, but we just sit at a picnic table and look at the beautiful view of the vineyard and the creek, and there's a rookery where the egrets are nesting, and the hillsides. It's pretty magical this time of year. All times of year it's great, but right now it's especially beautiful. And yeah, that's the deal.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, definitely reach out to Laura. She makes some wonderful Pinot Noir too from a different non-Alexander Valley region, but it's a really fun visit. So thank you. I'm going to kind of throw this question out for Katya before we get into David's cab, for Katya and for Liza to answer. And I'm just going to read it because it's hard for me to think and talk at the same time. Fair to say that the wide spectrum of wines, as it leans towards the richer reds like cabs, pair towards red meats. Yes, I would say that's generally true. And the rosé would pair most with white, but could you also pair it with some red meats? Katya and Liza, could you see this rosé working with some style of red meat?
I would for sure pair this rosé with pork, with lamb. We're going to make lamb for Easter, Passover excitement this weekend. So I think it would work with lamb. And for those who don't eat meat, I think it's great with mushrooms and seafood, of course. But Liza, I'll defer to you. You know more in this category.
I would absolutely agree. And I think your point before of charcuterie, prosciutto, things like that, I mean, I think that salty aspect would hold up really nicely. I think you could even, if you did like a duck breast with some sort of a fruity sauce, I think this would work nicely with that. Yeah, I definitely think there's, and poultry, I think there's a lot of directions that you could go with this wine. It has the weight to it and the complexity. It would stand up nicely with a lot of things.
Awesome, thank you. What was that, Katya?
And your Easter ham. Pass it around.
Yeah, definitely. I can't believe it's April already. Crazy. Okay, let's drink some cab. So here we have David Drake, who is the winemaker for Lancaster Estate. This is 53 acres of vineyards located on the volcanic hillsides of southern Alexander Valley. So it's at the confluence of Chalk Hill and Knights Valley appellations. And David joined the Lancaster team about 17 years ago as an intern and has been with them ever since. So that's pretty awesome. David, tell us about Lancaster.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, it's more like 21 years ago. Yeah, so Lancaster was founded in 1995 by a man named Ted Simpkins. He was in the wine distribution business at the time. And he had made a trip to Bordeaux in France and kind of fell in love with the idea of a chateau and how the wines aren't necessarily about the winemaker or anything in particular. It's about the actual location and where the vineyards are. So he got it in his head to kind of recreate that here in Alexander Valley. So he found this, it's a 70-acre piece of property planted to about 53 acres of all 5 Bordeaux varietals and a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc. And what we try to do is it's minimal impact winemaking, but really let the terroir and the place show what it is. So native yeast, native malolactic fermentation, we do Surly's aging and just kind of try not to mess up what comes out of the vineyard and put it into a bottle and try and be unique to this particular site. I think along with the other 2 wineries in this episode is very, we each have our own uniqueness to our properties. And we're not just buying fruit from wherever, it's all kind of off that site. So Bordeaux type blend, the blend changes from year to year. We're basically just trying to keep it consistent to what our flavor profiles are, and tends to be hopefully a little softer, more velvety, very luxurious sort of mouthfeel and flavors. And I feel like the big producer here. We make about 3,500 cases a year, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that much, but it's enough. We have about 3 core red blends, and then a couple hundred cases of Sauvignon Blanc that we make. And occasionally we'll do a little bit of like 100% Malbec or Cabernet Franc, kind of depending on what the year gives us. But that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Great, David, and kind of talk us through the flavor profile of this wine. So you mentioned like what you're doing is working with this very specific kind of place of land, and how do you feel that the flavor profile for your wines kind of maybe differ or are unique compared to other sites or vineyards?
So the soils, it's a variety of soils. There's volcanic, there's kind of, the riverbed sort of more fertile soils. And as far as like flavors, we get a lot of stone fruit, plums, like stewed plums and dark cherry. And then we do have a lot of, we have the small berries. So it's pretty big tannins, but in our, we kind of use an old world winemaking style where we're macro oxygenating our wine. So we're kind of beating it up throughout its 2-year aging, barrel aging, to try and soften those tannins and get them more approachable early on. The wine ages.
Hey, David, can you just lean into the computer a little more? We are having a hard time hearing you. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so we try and soften those tannins as much as we can in our barrel aging through our, we do a lot of splash racking and try and, I say we beat the wine up to try and tame it a little bit and try and get those tannins to be very soft and approachable early on. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that definitely comes through in this wine. It's very dark fruited. It's very luscious. It's very pleasurable, at least for me. And let's talk about the food pairing. And then I want to throw some questions out in something that came up in kind of our pre-game about the difference between Bordeaux blend and a 100% Cabernet. So Werner, I'm going to be coming back to you in a second. So get ready. But first, let's hear from Liza about what she kind of observed in this wine and how she created her pairing, which is the grilled pork chop with Cabernet braised plum, creamy farro, fennel, and kale.
So when I first tasted this wine, and it's interesting that David specifically said stewed plums, but I got that just those references to those deeper red fruits, and it was coming sort of again when I was tasting this and preparing this dish. It was a few months ago, still in the winter, but I love to incorporate dried fruits into sauces, especially with red wines. I feel like they marry really well together, and they kind of bring out notes of spice and other aspects that are just really compatible. And I wanted to do, I feel like people think Cabernet, they think steak. So to come up, with dishes that were a dish that was something different that also stood up to the weightiness of the wine. So I went with a nice rich pork chop. And I like to get my dried plums when I'm lucky enough from Bernier Farms, which they grow their plums and dry them in Alexander Valley as well. So it's just another great way to use some local product. And then the farro, in the end, I was like, oh, so it's sort of a risotto style, and we did a risotto menu, but I am such a huge proponent of this particular style of use for farro. If people aren't familiar with it, it's a really beautiful nutty grain. It's been grown in Italy for thousands of years, and it just has a lovely flavor, and it's nice and healthy, and it's delicious. And you can cook it in a similar fashion to risotto, where you slowly add stock and you finish it with a little butter and a little cheese, and it gets this creamy deliciousness. And the lacinato kale, I thought, had again a nice slight bitterness to it and an herbaceousness that worked with the wine and kind of balanced some of the fruity flavors. So this was a fun cab to pair with, because it had different levels, and it didn't have too much tannin that needed so much fat to stand up to it. But it was a fun one to cook with.
Great, thank you. And I think one thing that I think is kind of interesting as a sommelier, like working with chefs, is how you can sometimes take a white meat and pair it with really big red wines, or sometimes take a red meat and pair it with lighter bodied red wines. So can you talk a little bit about a pork chop preparation and how you prepare it differently to pair it with the darker red wine? So kind of what was the process of the grilling, the charring, how you make a white meat kind of work with such a full-bodied red wine?
Sure. I mean, I think part of it is the pork itself. We use a heritage breed that has a naturally beautiful fat cap to it. And the fat in steak as well, it's the fat that adds the richness to it, and that can kind of stand up and cut through some of the more tannic aspects of a larger red wine. So this pork chop, and then as you mentioned, the char, it's, for me, grilling it and charring not only the top and the bottom, but also those edges where the fat is, and getting it a little bit crispy and a little bit charry. Those notes just they just work really nicely with the red wine, and they give you that aromatic sense too. But I brine the chops, and there's a little bit of spice and a little bit of seasoning in there that also picks up a couple of the spice notes from the wine, so you can add a little more complexity to the meat through the brining process. But yeah, I definitely think that there are definitely ways that you can make something like a pork chop stand up nicely to a larger wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And those heritage breeds, as you mentioned, they have just so much flavor as opposed to the meats that you get in the supermarket. So that's a really great point. Thank you. David, before we get into Bordeaux blend versus Cabernet Sauvignon, tell us how we can buy your wine, and also what kind of hospitality or visiting experiences that Lancaster is offering.
So lancaster-estate.com is the website, and all the wines are available there. Right now, they're just doing by reservation outdoor tastings. They're hoping we'll be open more. We have a nice cave here. They can do tastings in the cave when we're allowed to do that again. And they're working right now on planning some vineyard tours and tastings in the vineyards and stuff like that, to kind of get people excited when we can get back out and kind of have more fun than we have lately.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks so much. And Lancaster, by the way, is just it's a beautiful estate, and it is quite reminiscent actually of some of the greatest chateaus in Bordeaux. So if you're looking to just have a very decadent experience, Lancaster is a great place to have it. So definitely check it out. It's worth the visit, and not too far from Laura's winery, actually. So it could be a nice little day. Cool. So I want to get into, and this was something, everyone, that kind of came up, as I mentioned in our pre broadcast conversation, about the difference between 100% Cabernet Sauvignon and these Bordeaux blends that bring in, as does the Lancaster, some Merlot, Malbec, a little bit of Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Franc. So I kind of just want to put it out there for Werner and David to discuss for everyone about what kind of the differences is between. I think there's sometimes in association with a lot of guests that I talk to that 100% Cabernet Sauvignon is better, or that a Bordeaux blend is better. And of course, it's not better or worse, they're just different. And so yeah, I just want to put it out to you two to kind of discuss about what the differences are between making a 100% varietal wine and a blended wine.
David, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I mean, I think with the 100% Cabernet, you're just looking for true Cabernet expression and what that varietal brings. You know, it says Cabernet Sauvignon on our label. That was maybe 10 or 12 years ago a marketing decision. We used to just say red wine on there, but having red wine when you're out in restaurants, you get kind of paired in this other reds category. And at that time, single varietals were kind of the thing. So to be in that, you wanted to be in that Cabernet section of the wine list at those nice restaurants. So we made that decision to put that on the label. For what we get out of the blenders, so, you know, we have, in addition to Cabernet Sauvignon, the Malbec, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. Merlot is kind of a lighter version of Cabernet Sauvignon, a little more floral, a little fruity, kind of freshens the wine up a bit. Malbec, again, the Malbec on the property here is really nice. It's almost juicy fruits, very, very fruity, big berries. Kind of adds just a lot of those almost like strawberry and more brighter fruit flavors to it. Petit Verdot adds some structure and tannin and a lot of color. You know, a little bit goes a long way, like 1%, 2% will really drastically change the wine. And what I leave out, Cabernet Franc, that kind of adds another more floral and kind of aromatic profiles to the wine. And being able to play with all those and kind of tweak our blends to, you know, if it's a big Cabernet year, we can kind of balance that with some of those blenders. And if it's a weaker Cabernet year, we can kind of adjust that ratio to kind of be consistent with our flavor profile here. Again, though, I think all those wines on their own can be spectacular. It's kind of just what you want to do with them.
Yeah.
So are you making those blending decisions year to year? So does the blend kind of change every year just based on how things are tasting?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the goal is to be consistent, to have the wine that our signature Lancaster flavor profile to be the same, but the components you're using are, you know, if it's a hot year, cold year, whatever, they change. You know, our Merlot ratio can range from 7 to 14%, and you know, those wines side by side, you know, different vintages, and hopefully you get the same. It stands out as being Lancaster, regardless of what the blend is.
Got it. Thank you.
We made wine in 2005 from a neighbor's wine vineyard down the hill on Chalk Hill. He didn't know what to do with, I don't know, I gave him all the vines and he said, you go ahead and do whatever you want with it. So I made 5 barrels of the cab, 100% from 2005. I still have some bottles left, but it took time. It took a lot of years to get this soft and get it really nice, drinkable.
Yeah.
Down the road, I planted my own Merlot and a little bit of Malbec, and I started to make only blends in my little cellar. So I made 2 or 3 barrels a year, and holy moly, what a change. The blend just makes it a little softer, especially the Merlot. So then I started to love actually more the blends than the straight, because the cab took forever to get soft. And I even made a Cab Franc from Siva Page up the hill where the power lines are. I made 100% Cab Franc. It took forever to get for that guys to soften up. But once it was aged, oh my gosh, it was awesome.
Yeah, we decided, because this is our inaugural vintage and because we're primarily grape growers, first and foremost, we decided to do a 100% Cabernet Sauvignon just so we could really represent our fruit and we would know exactly what our fruit tastes like and how it can age. And to be honest with you, we released it last fall. It's a little tight. It needs a little time. Like we probably could have let it sit another 6 months or a year. So this is going to be a great one to age. But then we also made this blend and we had a blending party online, of course, in last March to see what would taste good. And we threw Carignan into our Cabernet, which is totally rogue. A Carignan is a Rhone varietal.
It don't belong in there.
But it tastes great. So this one, opens up now and people love it right away. And the cab just needs to breathe a little bit and age, and it'll really represent the vineyard well, I think, I hope.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. Breaking rules. Totally. That's so California. I love it.
We're going to do another crazy thing in the fall. No?
Well, hold on. We have one more exciting blend coming, but that's not for now.
Laura, do you have anything that you want to add on? You're no stranger to Cabernet Sauvignon in the Alexander Valley.
Oh, wow. Thanks for asking. Well, I mean, just maybe building on what they all said, yeah, with we don't make any blends with Hawks. It's all 100% cab. And yeah, they do take some time to come around. I like them young when they're a little bit, they kind of push back a little. They're super grippy and like, like strip your teeth a little, but paired with the right food, it really works. And then in 10, 15, 20 years, oh my God, I just love the tertiary, the secondary, all the flavors that you get from an older wine. So it was a decision for us early on just to go 100% cab. That's mainly what we grow. We do grow a couple other of those Bordeaux varietals, but we sell that for, and yeah, I think it just is a house decision, and as you said, Courtney, there's not better or worse. It's just a difference of flavor profile, and ageability, I'd say, definitely factors in too. So yeah.
Thank you. I did get a question about different varieties planned for the future. So we've heard about the Carignan, and Laura, of course, makes a wonderful Semillon. But real quick, and I don't have any sense of the answer to this question, but are any of you sort of planting or experimenting with different grape varieties right now that you have not been as yet making into wine?
I mean, I have been pushing and pushing for other varieties for a while. This one grows some Zinfandel that he loves Zinfandel. And we actually, with what we could pick a couple of years ago, we did make a blend of Zinfandel and Cab, but I would like to grow more. I think people love blends and I love blends. So we do have a tiny patch of Merlot and Malbec that unfortunately got wiped out in 2019, but I would like to grow more. I would love to grow a little bit of Merlot. I didn't know, David, that you grew Malbec. So I'd love to try that sometime. And definitely maybe some Petite Verdot for the color.
Yeah.
Great. David, Laura, are either of you playing around with any?
We're pretty much stuck with our Bordeaux varietal, so we're kind of, what we do is what we do. We don't have any plans to change anything at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a little too warm and just getting warmer, as we know, in Alexander Valley to grow Pinot Noir. We've talked about maybe trying Pinot Meunier, but I can't see it. Chardonnay is like the edge of what we can comfortably grow. And it is where the vineyard is, where the Chardonnay comes from, and the Semillon is probably the coolest spot in all of Alexander Valley. It's really where it meets the Russian River Valley. So it suits those varietals, but I mean, maybe like an Italian varietal somewhere down the line I could see, like a Sangiovese. I know they grow quite a bit of that in other parts of Alexander Valley. And we used to grow Tempranillo and made a lovely rosé of Tempranillo, but we took that out because, well, Cabernet is king, and as it should be, but that's mainly what we're growing and selling and also producing.
Yeah, it's I think one thing that a lot of people who aren't in the wine industry forget is what a long-term commitment wine growing is. So it takes years and years to develop vineyards and make wine out of it. And consumers are not necessarily eager to embrace something that they've never heard of or can't pronounce. So, it's kind of like, if it works, like, we're going to keep doing it. All right, we have about 5 minutes left on this, our last episode. And so I want to answer a really fun question, which is, and I just kind of want to go around really briefly, and let's start we'll go in the same order, Katya and Warner, and then Laura, and then David. And the question is, what do you love about being in the wine industry?
Woo. Do you want to go first?
Well, it's very short. I already mentioned it before. I worked overseas. I worked for Chevron. I never, I love wine, and I grew up in Vienna, Austria, and we had, my little funny story is that we always go outside Vienna where they have the Heurig, it's a wine made from the last year, very young. And we went I never forget that moment. We went to this favorite wine place in outside Vienna, and we always go there with my brother, with my father, my parents, and then my sister's husband, and we spent a lot of time there. And this old man that owned it said, I don't have any sons. I don't know what to pass this on to. No, I need somebody to run this thing. And this is way back. You're talking when I was 18 years old. And then I came over here when I was, 20? But that's sort of what started somewhat. And we were interested in wine ever since, sort of, and in the wine growing. And then this became sort of a dream come true.
And it really is a nice opportunity. I mean, wine brings people together. You get to enjoy it together. You get to enjoy the beautiful weather. And it's certainly a labor of love. Farming is not easy.
It's not for
It has been hard these last few years, but it brings people together. We're very new, and everyone I talked to has been immensely helpful, happy to give me advice. And I've paired with, we're a women-driven business. I've paired with girlfriends who've helped me figure out what the heck I'm doing and try and get a business sense on my head. We've partnered with UC Davis, donating grapes to them and getting wonderful information from them. They're doing great research there. So that's really been the joy of this. You're doing everything from the soil to social media. Just mind-blowing.
Totally. Well, building on that, I would say, for me, I got into the wine industry kind of happenstance, worked in restaurants and in a wine shop. And then I decided I wanted to be a sales rep with a bag of wine over my shoulder, jetting around, visiting people. I love the versatility that the wine industry affords. You can do everything from making labels to all the social media now and the growing and the winemaking, everything. There's never a dull moment to be had. And also the intersection of kind of art and science. I'm not a scientist, and I don't do the farming per se, but I know a little bit about it, enough to keep me interested. And I love the creativity that all the people in the wine industry have, and that I get to do from day to day. So yeah, and bringing people together. It's so lovely to share and just make something that brings people pleasure and joy, and that they can enjoy together. It's about people. So at the end of the day, really.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, I agree with that. That wine and science combination is a nice, art and science is a good thing. For me also, the estate's a very gorgeous place. It's a wonderful place to come to work every day and enjoy the scenery. If nothing else, it's walk in the park. I also really like the cyclical nature of it. Like right now, we're just starting to see bud break, and some of the vines are starting to leaf out, and kind of like, this is the beginning. We get another chance, and we're going to try again, and you know, get through this harvest, and then, you know, at the end of the day, when you get through it all, you've got a fantastic product that you're really happy to share with people. We're not just making widgets. We're, you know, it's something that people love and enjoy to share.
Awesome. Thank you. Liza, you're a chef, but you're in the wine industry for sure.
I mean, I love the relationships that are built between winemakers and chefs, that they get to collaborate, and that each product kind of brings out different aspects of the other, and that you can, create magical moments, bringing the two together. And I think too, for me, I actually have pieces of my family in the wine business as well. And I love the family aspect of it. And Alexander Valley, it's so special because there are so many families. I love that it's, you know, I know that Laura, her kids participate, and so many families are out there. It's grandchildren to grandparents out there picking the wine, making the wine, participating in the whole process. And same with the restaurant, that it can be a real family business. I think that's really special. And Alexander Valley being owned by so many properties owned by multi-generation families, it's really special.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been a really good conversation. I'll close by saying what I love about it, particularly being a sommelier in the Bay Area and having that access to wine country is just the constant reminder and the connection to the land. So I get to share wine with my guests in kind of a fine dining sort of formal environment, but it's always about the people and about the land and about the farming. And it's just such an important reminder that wine is an agricultural product, and to kind of share this like fine, sometimes expensive product, but to be reminded that, you know, there's people in the dirt, and that it's seasonal and it's unpredictable. It just makes it so beautiful to me. And it's always such an honor to be able to serve it to my guests and to pair it with the food that these chefs put so much effort into. So it's, it's a pretty awesome career. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us, for all of the winemakers and the chefs who put so much time into this. And as a reminder, go to alexandervalley.org. You can order wine from all of our past episodes with recipes, with pairings, and have them delivered to your door. So it's pretty cool. Thank you so much, and happy spring, everyone. Happy Easter, and cheers.
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 Thank you, Courtney.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney.
Ciao.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney.
Thank you, everyone. It's so nice to see you all.